At some point in the future, somebody's going to be watching a movie about our era, Louis, and there's going to be a human bookkeeper.
Right.
And they're going to turn to their parents 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 10 years from now, and they're going to say, bookkeepers used to be people?
Right.
That's so weird. I thought they were always artificial intelligence. I thought they were always computers.
You're listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Louis Prosperi. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I'm Louis Prosperi. Our guest is the founder of Scaling New Heights, Joe Woodard. Welcome back to the show.
It's always great to be here, Louis.
I am enjoying this. When I was told that you were coming back to the show, I got super excited because you're always the guy that knows everything when it comes to what's coming up or what we should be wary of. So what has happened since the last time we spoke? If you can give me the thing that you're passionate about right now.
Well, since we last spoke and since I last appeared on this podcast, we've launched an enterprise firm consulting division specific to client advisory services. We brought in a BDO veteran who worked in their CAS team at a very senior level, Deborah Deffer.
Right.
And we brought in somebody that had run all the gauntlet of Sage Enterprise, CCH, Thomson Reuters into its enterprise division. That'd be Todd Robinson. They were the dream team. They hit the ground running. The need for CAS development in the enterprise firm space is extreme. And, it's for the bookkeepers listening in, because I know you have a heavy bookkeeper audience, they have the same needs you do, bookkeeper. They just have them at scale with more politics.
Right.
So what we learned is, as we've been working with bookkeepers for 20 years, and as we were one for over a couple decades, as we had one of those practices, the same problems exist. I just needed somebody to package it and scale it and then navigate it in a large firm space. And that team has done a jam-up job with that. So that's the big new thing here.
So which is where accounting and bookkeeping is going now, is the standard services, or what we call core services, are basically the eggs and milk of a grocery store, and the advisories where people come to shop. And what you've done is you've made sure that the advisory is the real value of your...
Yeah, and I'm doing that from the sole practitioner bookkeeper, just like I know your org is doing as well. We all have to play that game. Right. It's just that the CPA firms were often already at the advisory play because they had the resources to staff that. They had the clients who were demanding that, and they're connecting the advisory to the modernized bookkeeping. Whereas the people we've worked with historically for 20 years had the modernized bookkeeping, they're trying to reach up into advisory.
Right.
Really interesting play. So as long as we can help modernize bookkeeping and we can upskill to advisory, we can satisfy everybody from the sole practitioner to the top 10.
That is fantastic. So here's something, we talk about advisory all the time. I get it, but the toughest thing is the customer kind of expects that from us. Right? Because we're professional accountants, professional bookkeepers. When you're trying to sell advisory, go, well, isn't that what you really do? So how are you packaging advisory so that it's kind of built into the system? I'm assuming it's kind of built into the system rather than as an add-on, because when you put it as an add-on, they go, no, it's okay, I'll just take the core, forget. How do you build it in so that everybody benefits?
All right. So I'm so glad you asked the question. We're very passionate about this. So first, we stopped calling this tiers of pricing, and we evolved that into tiers of service.
Okay.
Because I could have somebody that's a bookkeeping client that spends more money than somebody who is an advisory client. It all comes down to the size and the need and the lift, right? So the pricing isn't the right measurement to say I've gone from level A to B to C. Service tiers are. And then we thought, well, an even better way to frame it, instead of saying tiers, is to say swim lanes. Because tiers implies that maybe as I get bigger, I need to go up, or as I get more complex, I need to go up. But in truth, a very small business could need regulatory compliance, and a very small business could need, and often does need, a cash flow projection. Well, when you've done those things, you've jumped swim lanes. So if we think of client accounting services, now they're just calling client advisory services, and it includes accounting. So if you take this client advisory services swimming pool, we divide it into the swim lanes of transactional accounting. We don't call it bookkeeping, it only because in a CAS model, bookkeeping implies too many swim lanes. Bookkeepers are heroes of business. They jump in, they do whatever is required, and they often undercharge for it. All right. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to delineate the swim lanes by taking the B word out of it, the bookkeeping word out of it, just a minute, put it on the shelf over here with full respect to it, because I called myself that for 20 years, and say, just to avoid the confusion, we have a swim lane called transactional accounting. And in that swim lane, you're a historian. So to give a payroll example, my only job is to record net change in payroll liabilities and then record payroll expenses for the period. That's it. I'm a historian. All right. And then the next swim lane is controllership. This is how we break it apart. A lot of people have different ways to define it. In controllership, I provide regulatory compliance. So now my job with payroll is to file the quarterly payroll return and the annual payroll returns, because I have to be compliant. Okay. And in controllership, I might pick up some other employee compliance, like, making sure that in the States we have this thing, I-9s, and then we have the -9 version for every state. In Georgia, it's a G9. All of that onboarding paperwork, make sure we're maintaining payroll compliance. That's regulatory compliance. Then we have another swim lane, and that swim lane is financial planning and analysis services, right? And in that swim lane related to payroll, then I would be doing strategic guidance on operating capital and hiring strategies and overall budgets for the company when it comes to how they're spending their money. Then there's another swim lane called back office process outsourcing. Now, we only have 4, so I'm at the end of my swim lanes. And in back office process outsourcing, I would actually do the payroll runs.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there are a lot more examples. I could run sales tax all the way through those examples and everything else. I use payroll because it's very common. Yeah. So I'm either recording historical payroll, I'm processing a payroll, that's back office process outsourcing. I am doing compliance with payroll, that's controllership. Or I am doing overall operating capital requirements and making sure that we aren't overloaded or understaffed on work for the client. And that would be FP&A.
As you were talking about swim lanes, I'm going to go to something that I am, because I have an accounting firm right now in Canada, and I also have an outsourcing firm that I'm working with as well. And one of the things that I truly believe, because I am separating the, like you said, I'm separating the fees from the actual customer value, because it just doesn't seem to connect too well. So I'm going to call it subscription modeling, because when you were talking like that, that to me was similar to what I use here as a subscription model, where each lane isn't really designed. Each model or is basically a series of services that are in there. It doesn't matter what size you are, more or less. It matters what you need, right? Where your needs are.
So I'm so glad you brought subscription modeling up, because I've had this conversation with Ron Baker a lot. He's the one that I think first pioneered that subscription language into the accounting profession, helped us to bridge that.
Yeah, actually, I have to admit, Ron, even though it might have been out there in minor forms, Ron's the communicator. He's the one that's able to take all of that stuff, put it into a format that we can all learn and understand. So
yes,
I agree that he's fantastic.
Absolutely. So yes, what we had is we had reoccurring revenue models, right? We would charge monthly. And I think some people are even playing with the tax return a little bit on that, saying, okay, let's just pay me so much per month and we'll throw some things in. We were doing some bundling.
Yeah.
But true subscription economics, where you're tracking MRR, ARR, lifetime value, cost of acquisition, I don't know of anybody that was ahead of him on saying, let's take this software model and let's use this model as a way of
you're right.
Managing our business.
To be honest with you, the models out there were bundling and menu driven. at best.
Yes, menu-driven. That's exactly right. And menu-driven means scope-driven.
Yeah.
And that's the very opposite of subscription. So Ron would be the first to tell you that subscription is not a pricing model, it's a business model.
Correct.
Right? And it's a very important distinction, because just because you charge every month or even every week, I know some bookkeepers that charge weekly, and there's a whole other conversation we could have about that. I like it. I'm in favor of it in certain cases. And there's some that charge quarterly. Whatever it is, the point is it's a business management model. And so he was the first to kind of intersect that. Now, when you do that, it means that nature matters so much more than scope. Scope is almost impossible to maintain anyway. So as soon as, and I used to preach this, Louis, I used to say, every time that there's a new bank rec, every time that there's a cross of a threshold of so many transactions of checks or bills, then you've got to watch that, you got to monitor that, you got to review that, you got to be very quick to go up on your fees, because scope creep is a killer. And scope creep is important. And if you try to follow that advice, you're going to have our full-time scope creep management person just monitor the engagements, and they're not going to see everything. Right? But subscription speaks to nature. And I can tell if I'm only supposed to record net change payroll liabilities and payroll expenses for the period, and that's all you've hired me to do, and then you ask me about payroll tax returns at the end of the quarter, or you ask me about doing a payroll run or converting you to a payroll solution, very clearly we've gotten into a different swim lane here. And I can say to the client, and if you're listening here and you're like, well, what do I do? What's the framing? You always start with the positive. I am happy to help you with that payroll tax notice you just received. That's in a different swim lane than where we're currently swimming. And we'd like to engage you now to do payroll compliance work so we can manage this and prevent it from happening in the future. There's your script. Now you charge more money.
So, like I said, Ron's brilliant. I've known him for many years, and every time he brings out a book, he just basically takes it to another level. And I agree about the subscription model. What he managed to do is he managed to actually convert its use for software, other type of things, and bring it into the accounting industry. So I agree with that 100%. So when we talk about subscription models, I think the biggest thing is exactly what you said, is it's a lane or a component where the description that I love from Ron was Netflix, right? Mm-hmm. When you buy the subscription from Netflix, you have access to their entire thing, right? So what the lane is basically is whatever that lane is. If you're in that lane, you have access when you need it, how you need it.
Yes. I'm not going to say scope doesn't matter. Scope does matter when it comes to
picking the lane,
quoting the price. The price should still be by client. See, and that's where some people differ. They're like, okay, if I'm in the transactional accounting swim lane, it is always $2,000 a month. If I'm a $20 million business or I'm a $1 million business, it's always $2,000 a month. I think that works with software, works with Netflix. I don't think that works with accountancy. I think you still price the client. However, when you do, then you say, if it is about transactional accounting, historical record keeping, throw it my way and it is in at this price. Then once a year, you don't manage scope creep, you manage profitability.
Yeah.
Is this client harming my gross profit margins? And you could do it semi-annually. Then you have a conversation with the client and you talk about adjusting price, correcting price, and you can put that in the positive too. You've been growing a lot lately. I can see you're expanding the number of entities we're managing on your behalf. Congratulations. Now let's have a conversation about a price adjustment. But you could do that at the end of the year.
I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because when it comes to volume or complexity, right, that's another mix in our components. So what I've done in my practice is I've set a limit of about $2.5 or $3 million, right? After that, we still have the lanes, the swim lanes, but they are now bespoke pricing. So because I know that from a $0 to $3 million, I can effectively price in a flat fee for those what I call silos, right? And I built it into the silos. But once you go over 3 million, each individual customer, in my view,
is priced differently.
It's hard to do it. Doesn't mean that the lane changes. It's still either this one or that one.
You really actually have two swimming pools because so let's be clear on this too. A swimming pool is a portfolio of CAS, and what I just heard you say is I have portfolio A that I price one way, and portfolio B that I price a different way. And each portfolio has its own gross profit margins, its own pricing models.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So, but like I agree with you. Once you get to a certain, like your $20 million company, even though they're both, like you said, historically based, the chances are the volume, the amount of
you got to have a customer
accounts and stuff. Yeah. There's just no way of making it.
And the chances, Louis, of them only being in the transactional accounting swim lane are very slim too. They're probably going to burn the whole pool up. And that's okay. That's good. That just means that you absorb more into the price.
Yeah, I guess we're two business accountants talking about accounting, but I do love this. Let's talk about the big 900-pound elephant in the room, and what it's doing not just to the economy, but to our industry is AI. How is that? Because AI now is, if I remember correctly, not only is impacting how we actually do our work, but the actual business model disruption, and also people who are getting into our business. They're not professional accountants anymore, right? There's other parties. So please tell us what your thoughts are on that.
That's a very big topic. And a couple of things I would do at the very beginning, I would recommend to your listeners, because we are going to be able to go so deep on this one. I strongly recommend reading two books by Daniel Susskind, Dr. Daniel Susskind, Oxford professor, economist. They're research-based. They are objective, though he does have some subjective forecasting. It's all based off of data. So if you want to get a non-emotional, researched, clinical, professorial kind of forecast of what's happening in the professions, I would recommend reading a book called The Future of the Professions, which he wrote in 2015 when people thought AI only belonged on the Starship Enterprise. He saw it. He analyzed it, he researched it, and he predicted it with amazing accuracy 10 years ago, exactly where we would be today. And that book has gone through some revisions, so it's still highly relevant. It is an ancient history. Read The Future of the Professions. The second book by Daniel Susskind I would recommend to read is A World Without Work, which is a little hyperbolic, thank goodness, because you're like, if he titled it that and he's doing all this research, is it really going to be a world without work? It's a world that's going to work very differently.
Right.
But if we underestimate how differently we're going to work, we do so at our peril. So that book will prepare you for the next 10 years, keeping in mind that he wrote a book in 2015 that was dead on for now. So you need to listen to this guy.
I have read the first one. I haven't read the other one.
Okay.
But I didn't read it back in 2015. I think I read it about 3 or 4 years ago. And
it stays relevant, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was relevant. I didn't know it was that old of a book, to be quite honest.
Yeah, isn't that crazy that he saw it that far out?
Yeah.
And so now he came in 2018 when our theme of our show was Tame the Machines. And he was telling us how to basically tame it over the next, several years. He's coming back this year to Scaling New Heights in June, where our theme is Strange New World. And he's going to be providing a keynote based on his book, A World Without Work. And then we're going to be using that as the cornerstone for everything we do with our scaling story from that point forward is, okay, how are we going to work very differently? And how is the world going to be without the work of some of the things that we are doing today? So now to kind of take it from those two recommendations, and now, your audience is equipped in ways I can't do like Susskind or can't do in 20 minutes here. Let me kind of drill down on a couple of key things. One is the movie Hidden Figures is a great way to kind of, from a podcast perspective,
I love that movie.
Cast the vision. I love that. It's such a powerful movie. And I just, so much of Black history, I just don't know still. I'm just learning. And there are 3 powerful characters in Black history. Yeah. I have a Black daughter, and we sat and watched that when she was a little girl, and I could just see the inspiration just glowing in her eyes. Any, I think, woman would feel it. A Black woman felt it especially. Black girl
the fact that they called people computers was the oddest thing.
That's where I'm going. They said they called people computers, and it wasn't because they were Black people. That wasn't like it was because they were just people, right? A person was a computer. Now, it was so funny you picked up on that, Louis, because that's exactly where I was going. Is people used to be computers. Now, my daughter turned to me as we were watching that, and she goes, people used to be computers? I thought computers were always things. And so now, fast forward, at some point in the future, somebody's going to be watching a movie about our era, Louis, and there's going to be a human bookkeeper.
Right.
And they're going to turn to their parents 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 10 years from now, and they're going to say, bookkeepers used to be people?
Right.
That's so weird. I thought they were always artificial intelligence. I thought they were always computers.
Yes.
Now, I'm not trying to scare your audience. I am trying to make sure your audience knows a radical shift is coming, that maybe the sky's not falling, but there are things falling from the sky. And listeners, if you don't look up, it will hit you in the head. Look up. Right.
Well, let's be honest. Let's take that movie, for example, is near the end of the movie, they were bringing those IBM machines. Remember that?
Next evolution. Yes.
And they had to figure out how to get them in there. And the smart lady was the one who learned how to read the manual and programmed it.
I love that scene. It's perfect. Yes.
So what's interesting is she saw that because prior to the computer room, which all those people were,
was
being replaced, was really being replaced by this big machine.
Yes.
And if you knew how to use the machine, you went to the next level.
Louis, you just nailed it. That's the exact message of the Hidden Figures. Every bookkeeper needs to go watch or rewatch that movie, and they need to be inspired by what the lady did when she became the IBM machine, or I think it was an IBM machine, but the big computer expert.
Yeah.
Because her career endured at NASA for decades after that.
Yeah.
While everybody else's job was replaced.
Right. I'm just saying that it's those people that take a look at the next level and make it. So let's talk
differently. We're back to she worked differently. Yes.
So let's talk about, rather than professional bookkeepers or accountants being scared of AI, Joe, how can they take advantage of AI right now, and what do they need to do for their practice?
Well, you got a couple of pathways. All right. So then only your listeners can decide which pathway is best for them. There's the pathway there's the pathway on stay on the platform that you already know and love, that you've got your processes built around it, that your clients are familiar with and comfortable with. That might be Xero, that might be QBO, whatever you're on. Then layer artificial intelligence technologies on top of those platforms. First, both Xero and QBO and also Zoho Books and all of them are leaning in very heavily to native, not to native AI, but to AI enablement with their platforms.
Can you talk a little bit about AI enablement? Because there's different terms of AI that's going out there.
Yes, there's native AI and AI enabled is the way I divide the swim lanes down. So I'm going to define native AI in just a minute, but you can take all right, let me go back a step, Louis. There are three different major eras here. There's the era of desktop.
Right.
Well, if you want to go back, there's the era of paper. All right. Then there's the era of centralized computing, not localized PC computing. Then there's the era of desktop, which is most of us where we started our career, if you're about my age. The era of desktop. Then there's the era of cloud. Then there's the era of AI. And in each one of those cases, what we're referring to is an infrastructural systematic platform, right?
Yes.
And AI is not just a piece of software. AI is a platform. It's the next evolution of technology from cloud to AI. Not that we won't still access it through our browser, but it's a completely different platform that it will live on. I mean, you can access desktop apps from your browser. It doesn't mean they're not in the older era, right?
Correct.
So we're right at the tipping point between cloud and AI that we were in at that tipping point in the early 2010s between desktop and cloud. We're about to feel it again as we approach the end of this decade. It's going to be a lot faster and a lot more disruptive than cloud was. Now, so if we first define that as, okay, we're entering a new era. The question is, what road do I take into this era? Do I take the cloud software products from this era that I believe will endure? I mean, people are still in Thomson Reuters and CCH and Lacerte and Drake. They're still enduring to today from the desktop era. You just access them in more and more modern ways.
True.
So the cloud software of today, QBO, Xero, Zoho Books, and so forth, on NetSuite, will endure into the AI era. You will just put AI enablement layers on them. You'll go to their ecosystem, and you'll get month-end automation close tools. You'll get tools that more intelligently manage your bank feeds. You'll get tools that mine data and automatically analyze the data so you can self-serve that out to the financial coaches on your team. But it will all be AI on top of cloud.
I see.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, the next path you could go, if you wanted to, bookkeepers, is you could just jump straight to native AI now. Native AI are the programs that are built on top of the AI platform directly, so that you're not in a hybrid world.
Is there anything out there for us right now? Because I'm not familiar with anything.
There are. The native AI is Puzzle, Decimal, Dual Entry, Campfire, Rillet. Those are the 5 biggies.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? So they exist, and they're presently, that group that I just mentioned, those 5 alone have raised over $500 million in the last 18 to 24 months. So PE sees something too. They're heavily funded. They're amazing technologies. They're already built on top of the AI platform. Now, with that choice, Louis, you don't have any right answer. So you can either, because if you go the hybrid, cloud plus AI, it's a much smoother path in the short term. You're going to get really cool tools, and you're stacking, right? Somebody referred to it earlier this week as Frankastacking instead of Frankenstein. So Frankenstein, so it's Frankenstacking. I thought that was a really cool tool. I think it was Randy Johnson that said that. So you have to kind of Frankenstack it, sew the pieces together. But we've been doing that for years, Louis, right, with the cloud era. So it's not anything new.
No, it's true.
But you are in some degree kicking the can, because by the year 2035 or 2040, then you're going to have to deal with all right, now I got to hot platforms. All right, now that's path A. Path A has pros and cons. Path B, grab the native AI apps now, see where the puck is going, simplify the Frankenstacking, because it's not just that they do more natively inside the app. It's the way they integrate with other apps that's so much smoother, so much more modern, right? But the downside of that one, the con, is that you're a pioneer again. And,
Early
anybody
adopter.
that was kind of first out of the gate on Peachtree and QuickBooks Desktop, you know what it means to be a pioneer. Anybody who was first out of the gate on Xero or QBO, you know what it's like to be a pioneer. Do you have another pioneer moment in your career? If so, go out, grab one of those, and be a pioneer again.
So here's the big issue for us accountants and bookkeepers is when we talk about AI, we're worried about the critical and sensitive information that we have is floating out there and everybody gets access to it, right? Because OpenAI. And so how do you resolve that quandary? Is AI now secure enough for us accountants and bookkeepers to use? And that platforms that you just talked about, those platforms, because AI needs a bunch of information, a bunch of data to learn. And the best way for it to learn is to take everybody's stuff and learn with everybody.
Yeah.
So how do we balance those two issues where it's sensitive and
but informed, right? You spun the mic. You want it to be omniscient, but only about everybody else's information. All right. So that's the way that kind of goes. So what I would say is that by going through these apps that have met SOC 2 compliance, parenthetical note, the ICPA is working very hard on additional layers of audit around AI because they know that has to be done. SOC 2 and AI only gets part of the job done. But let's just say, okay, they're SOC 2 compliant. You've done your diligence. They stand between you and the omniscience of data. They go out and they harvest that information. They place it into their structured data sets. Then they let those inform the way that your bank feeds work, or while they're putting an insulated layer between you and the overall omniscience of AI. Now, there are ways you can do that by going through an LLM directly, through a GPT directly, building your own agents. You just have to have a
can you
privatized version of ChatGPT.
Sorry. When it comes to these acronyms, I'm not familiar with them. If you could just make them a little more.
Yeah, no problem. So a large language model, thank you, Louis, for helping me break this down. A large language model, or an LLM, examples of those would be ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, yes, and Copilot. It's where you would go and you just chat with the AI and ask it for directions, or ask it for a restaurant recommendation, or help to write an engagement letter. That's an LLM, large language model. And you can go straight to those directly, and people are today. But you've got to have a privatized version of that. So Copilot, if you're doing that through your Microsoft 365 environment, you can just go in and just look at their different subscription layers and paid layers and make sure that it's an entirely privatized version of Copilot. You can subscribe to that with ChatGPT. They have an enterprise version, what they call a Teams version of ChatGPT, both of which are privatized. And then the other LLMs, large language model, GPTs, they have the same thing. Now, first you want to make sure you're behind that privatized wall. If not, whatever you stick there, the larger LLM platform learns from it. Now, learns from it is very different from takes it, sticks it out on the web, and makes it instantly discoverable. It's that you teach the larger model with all this sensitive financial information about you and your clients. You still don't want it to learn those things, right? Now, that means that you need to put a wall there. Now
so that's like from ChatGPT, it's their workspace because they have a workspace model where it's a workspace system.
Yes, so I can create workspaces, and I can that has to do with internal permissions, and I can create projects where I can load a lot of information to the project, and I can create a data container where I can ask it questions that only relate to those documents I've put into that project. There's so many ways you could do this, and then you can even start building your own agents. But what you've just opened up here, Louis, is a very important part of the conversation. To embrace AI fast and to do it well, and if you've vetted the software, to do it safely, would be to go through an app that's built on AI or has AI enablement. Because then you're leaning on the app developer to take all that lift for you. That way, when you go into one of their apps, like Jax for Xero is a good example. Just ask Xero is what Jax stands for.
Yeah.
If I go into Xero and I ask Jax a question, Jax has already got all those protected privacy layers built in, and it can see all my Xero data. And so I can ask a very specific question. I'm safe. If I go to ChatGPT, that's like walking through a town in the Wild West back in the 1800s. I better be protected.
That's a good one, because I know a lot of my accounting friends are starting to use ChatGPT, and some of them are still using the free version, which I'm pretty hesitant about. But I use the one that I use is called the Workspace version, which is it's not the enterprise one, but it's
probably what they used to call Teams, because I can't keep up with all their name changes. But yes, so it's privatized. That's the moral of the story.
Well, it's safer. That's all I can tell you. I don't know the level, but I get what you're saying. So what are you using, Joe? Are you jumping right into the AR, or are you going with the Frankenstein?
We don't disclose our general ledger application because to be fair to all the other general ledger applications at Scaleo Heights, we don't want to give somebody preferential treatment.
Fair enough.
So that answer, unfortunately, I can't answer that. What I can tell you is that we are very heavy on AI enablement in our back office. I can answer that. And I can say that for our LLM, for our large language model, our generative AI, we're using ChatGPT primarily under a privatized model, the Enterprise Edition. And then we are morphing right now to making Copilot the primary, because we're built on a Microsoft 365 infrastructure. And I would say to any of your listeners, if you're Microsoft 365, then take a hard look at Copilot, especially if you're adopting one brand new, because that
now is Copilot, I get confused, but is Copilot and ChatGPT, are they now is it the same framework? Because I don't know anymore who owns what.
Yeah, no, Microsoft's got their fingers in a lot of pies. So I happen to be tracking this particular one. So they of course own Copilot 100%.
Okay.
They have a majority ownership in OpenAI, which is ChatGPT.
That's what I thought.
And they have,
okay.
I believe it's a minor ownership, but it's a double-digit percentage ownership of Anthropic. So they're basically betting on every horse.
That's the one that's in the news right now, to be quite honest.
That's the one that's in the news right now. And so then you've got Gemini is the only one of the major players, and Grok.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be dismissive of Grok. Actually, people like to be dismissive of it because of Elon Musk, but it's actually a big player out there. So Grok and Gemini are the two that Microsoft doesn't have a finger in those pies. Those are the big competitors to the
Google
Microsoft portfolio.
that one of them is Google and the other one is
Gemini is Google and Grok is Musk.
X. I call it X. Yeah.
X, yeah.
Well, Joe, before we go, shouldn't people be going to a special event that's coming up soon?
Well, if all of this has felt very strange to you, yes, Louis, because our conference this year for Scaling New Heights is themed Strange New World. And Dr. Susskind is going to get us kicked off with his World Without Work. We're going to have experts there on AI and its application to the industry, people who are leading out on this. We're going to have an entire 5-session, up to 10-hour track of just how to use chat prompts in an accounting world more effectively. But we're also going to have the stuff that you always come to Scaling New Heights for. QuickBooks training, Xero training, marketing, sales, practice advancement. It's all there. Yeah. This year is going to be the year we have over 2,000 people. And we are presently the second largest accounting technology conference in the United States with the largest accounting technology expo. So,
well, I'm going to be honest with you. The great thing about yours is you're agnostic, right?
Yes,
usually the big ones are either, and don't get me wrong, they're good. They're the Xero ones, the Intuit ones. The great thing about you is you've made it so that you can get flavors of all of them in one location, basically, which is fantastic.
Yes. Now, I will, to give credit to my buddies at AICPA. AICPA Engage is very agnostic as well. They're my fellow agnostic conference. And non-CPAs can go, but it is run by the AICPA. So I would say in terms of demographic reach, we're most agnostic because bookkeepers, standalone CAS practices, standalone tax practices, because we have a tax track, and CPAs are all welcome.
And where is it this year?
I'm Orlando.
Florida. Fantastic. Florida. You're not in Disney World again, are you?
Not in the middle of Disney World. Louis, you know very well. We tried that one year.
I loved it, by the way. I was there. I enjoyed your Disney World.
Yes, it sounded fun. We even had a multi-hotel thing where you would go to a breakout in one hotel, take a monorail.
Yes,
and go to a breakout in another hotel. That sounded great on paper. And that lasted about 5 minutes. And people were like, no more. We're across the interstate at a Marriott where we can see Disney World, but you're there. It's there if you want it. And you want to turn your back to it, you can. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fantastic. And when is it at? It's coming up.
It's coming up in June. So it's June 14th through 17th in Orlando at the Orlando World Center Marriott.
That's fantastic. Well, Joe, thank you for being on the show. That wraps up another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get all access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to the Spotlight edition of The Successful Bookkeeper with Louis Prosperi. For more information and to access the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening and have a great week.